That's a useless slide. You can't read it. What happened? Oh, I pushed my... So I'm going to tell you what that says. The fraudulent Federal Reserve note, is it honest? Nope. Is it seaworthy? Nope. Is it proven in commerce and in a savings role? Well, for several decades, it was useful in both commerce and trade and savings because the shareholders were limited in their fraud. The proportion of notes that they issued to the actual dollars that they possessed was not so extreme. Now it's many thousands and thousands, now it's no longer useful. And we talked yesterday about what keeps it in circulation. The primary thing that keeps it in circulation is the fact that the Congress has unlawfully declared the Federal Reserve note an obligation of the United States, so that all of our lives and labor and those of much of the world stand behind the fraud. And because of that fact of obligation, the Treasury accepts Federal Reserve notes for dues and debts due in dollars. That's the only reason why, and that's the biggest reason why they circulate, is many people pay the Treasury of the United States, and they would much rather pay a phony Federal Reserve note than an actual dollar. That's Gresham's law working in our favor, but ultimately to our doom. Is it legal tender by statute? Well, no, but sort of. Again, because Congress has called it obligations of the United States. That's not lawful, but it is a statute, and the Treasury feels bound to accept them for dollars. And so it's not legal tender, and all of our jurisprudence treats it as though it is because of that reason. Okay, is it the monetary unit of the United States by the Constitution? Never has been. Is it the monetary unit of the United States by statute? Never has been. Congress has never called it that. Has Congress ever used its Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 powers to regulate the value of other U.S. coin or foreign coin against it? Never has. Okay, this next slide compares the various alternatives, including the original. We call this an alternative, but again, I'm trying to make the point, it's not an alternative. The alternative is to go back, retrace your steps and go back to the original. Is it honest? Yep. Is it seaworthy? Yep. Is it proven in commerce and savings? Yep. And for a much longer trial than any other competitor since 19. Is it widely taken for the monetary unit of the United States? No. That's the tragedy. Most people don't know that this is the dollar. Okay, we mentioned at the very start, the evil has usurped the title of the cure. Okay. Is it legal tender by statute? Yes. Is it legal tender by the Constitution? Yes. Is it the monetary unit of the country by the Constitution? Yes. Is it the monetary unit of the country by statute? Yes. Has Congress, using its Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 powers to regulate the value of our coin and foreign coin, used that? Yes. Only Congress has only exercised that power properly. Every other coin, that the value of which it is regulated constitutionally, it is regulated against the standard, which is the constitutional standard of the dollar. So that gets yeps in all the right places except for one. That is it widely taken for? And that is crucial. Overcoming that weight of 100 years of misconception is crucial. But in drafting legislation at your county and state level, it's immaterial, or much less. It is not immaterial, but it is much less material than popular notions. Okay, the Liberty Dollar. Is it honest? Yep. Is it seaworthy? Yep. Is it proven in commerce and savings? To a significant degree, and would have been more so had they expanded that wider. Is it widely taken as by the populace and the popular unconscious assumptions for the monetary unit of the United States? No, never has been. Is it legal tender by statute? No, no statute pretends to make it legal tender. Is it the monetary unit of the United States? Nope. neither by the Constitution nor by statute. Has Congress ever regulated the value of any other coin against? Nope. Okay. So you got some nopes in all the wrong places. Bitcoin, is it honest? Absolutely. Oh, you don't remember? So about 25 years ago, somebody help me out here. Bernard von Nothaus, Hawaiian, with his own mint, minted gold and silver coins of beautiful quality and created bills of tender, which we as private persons retain the power and the right to issue bills of tender. We've just forbidden it to our governments to do that. And they were 100% honest bills of tender, honest notes. And he ran a circulation around the country of people using his beautiful gold coins and his beautiful silver coins and exchanging notes or bills of tender for those, because it is easier to carry a piece of paper in your pocket. And he was very careful, communicated with the Treasury Department and DOJ to make sure you have no legal complaint against us. No, that's perfectly legit. They were leading him into a trap. Then they seized all of his property and all the property of the people who were invested in, I don't know how many millions that was. They seized it. And they did so and prosecuted him falsely under, oh, you're counterfeiting the dollar of the United States. Well, he wasn't. None of his coins resemble the dollar at all. But he made the mistake of calling them dollars, which he was free to do. Other countries around the world for centuries have called their coins dollar in admiration of the quality of Joachim von Joachimsthal's dollar. But again, if you don't understand that if it is honest and seaworthy and it becomes widespread, that the United States Department of Treasury and the United States Department of Justice and the Federal Reserve System will come after you with everything they have, then you've been sleepwalking through history. And that's what happened to him. But he did not have the impregnability that actually using the dollar does have.
Sir, according to this, it was for 1998.
Thank you.
And they let him have it for 9 years.
Yep.
And shut him down till
Well, that's because they wanted many people. It's what you do when you're trying to trap a bear. You give him some free meat and this was intentional malice aforethought fraud. They wanted there to be millions of people. My wife and I bought, she's deceased now, but we bought Liberty. Raise your hand if you bought Liberty dollars. Yeah, so a few of us did that.
The face value in circulation when they shut it down was $65 million.
Yeah. So, they intended to do that not only to steal more people's property, but to ferret out honest, sound-thinking people so as to deal them a grievous wound, so as to discourage that type of honesty in the future. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the Joachim dollar was not the Liberty dollar.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, maybe I didn't communicate clearly. That's the superiority. What I'm saying is we're all imitating Joachim, even the United States, who is imitating Spain, who is imitating Joachim. We're all imitations of that, and as long as there's no clear intent to somehow pretend you are something that you are not, which he had none of, there's nothing about any of his coins that would make anybody but believe that is an attempt to counterfeit the dollar of the United States, except for his use of the word dollar. That was my point there. Use of the word dollar does not constitute counterfeiting. Trying to make something look like something it is not is counterfeiting. So anyway, so where we were, the Liberty dollar, yeah, we were talking about the Liberty dollar. Okay, follow-ons, I don't know how many cryptocurrencies there are, but the answers are largely the same depending on how good they are. And I'm not a judge because I'm not an expert in that, but I know some of them are absolutely honest, absolutely economically seaworthy, and for that reason alone, they will be and have been targeted, okay? Has any of them ever been widely taken for the monetary unit of the United States? No. Has any of them ever been declared by statute or constitution of any state of the United States to be legal? No. Has any of them ever actually been used as the standard against which Congress regulates the value of something else? No. Now we have goldbacks. Same thing. You can answer, are they honest? Yep. Are they seaworthy? Yep. Have they ever been widely taken in popular notion as the monetary? Nope. Monetary unit of the States? Nope. Has there been any statute or anything in the Constitution that would make anyone believe that they are legal tender? Nope. Anything ever in the Constitution of any state of the United States or statute of the United States or any state to make you think that they are the monetary unit of the United States? Nope, 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 nope. Has Congress ever used them as a standard against which to regulate them? Nope, nope, nope. So hopefully you'll see the sort of superiority of standing alone of the actual dollar of the United States. And that becomes crucial when you think of, and this here, see my caveat there? This deserves to be 6 hours on its own, this slide. So you're going to get just one little thing here. This slide needs work, needs to be an entire presentation. But if you're thinking of implications, some of this might catch on. Each of those alternatives boasted not only honesty and seaworthiness, but varying degrees of privacy. And we neglect that to our peril. That is a crucial attribute of real honest money, is absolute control over it of the owner and absolute privacy. And we misunderstand the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is a matter of trespass, protecting the persons, houses, papers, and effects of you and me against unlawful search and seizure. That's what it's about. And since at least the 1970s, the Federal Reserve note, because it is intrinsic to the entire fraudulent banking system of the Federal Reserve System, and all our banks are made part of that conspiracy, since at least the 1970s, by statute, not lawfully, but by statute, your bank has been reporting to the Department of Treasury, to the Federal Reserve, and several other people, everything you do with your money under certain thresholds. Those thresholds are continually going down. But if you're seeing the writing on the wall, the reason why the Federal Reserve and other central banks are creating central bank digital currencies is because they're threatened by the alternative of cryptocurrencies and the potential privacy there, and they have determined to do a jujitsu and make them the ultimate privacy trap and the ultimate control, to where not only everything you do and everything you buy and everywhere you do it is more easily invaded in violation of the Fourth Amendment, but actually shut off. If you watch what happened in Canada several years ago, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, sir.
Why did you say 1970?
Oh, I said because at least since the 1970s,
What happened in 1970?
I'm just saying, since at least the 1970s, there have been statutes passed that presume to command your bank, in violation of its agreement with you and in violation of the Fourth Amendment, to report regularly to the Federal Reserve and to the United States Department of Treasury and Justice and some other people what you are doing with your property. Okay, and that is a trespass of the Fourth Amendment. You may not do that whether you're a state or the United States government. You may not do that unless you first have some lawful jurisdiction. Second, have probable cause to believe that a crime is committed. Third, have probable cause that the evidence of that crime is such and such, lying in such and such place, and you swear all that before a judge, and he believes you, and he issues a warrant to search that particular place for that particular thing. In violation of all that, since beginning the 70s, Congress has presumed to make statutes commanding your banks, and now they're commanding your credit card, now they're commanding others, presuming to violate the Fourth Amendment on our behalf, to tell you what Glenn Miller, what Reed Miller, what anybody else is doing with his or her property, again, which falls under the person's, houses, papers, and in effect of that person. And it's where the trajectory is going is cashless laws. You're seeing the cashless laws happen in Europe and coming here, so that even the Federal Reserve notes that you own, absolutely your property, will not be accepted because they want to invade every transaction you ever make. And not only that, but be able to shut it off and prevent it and starve you. Yes, sir.
Commoditizes our information.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that's part of the reason why we're doing it.
What he was saying, they're commoditizing it, but I would argue that's true. And that's what's in it for the big tech giants. But what's in it for our errant general government is the dream that is almost realized now, that not even Stalin dreamed, but it was revealed to John on Patmos, if you've read the book of Revelation, more than 2,000 years ago, of absolute control over everything that you do with what is yours, including your body. Yes, sir.
They would have to repeal the legal tender laws because tender of payment, refusal of tender of payment extinguishes the obligation. So if I walk into a place that says no cash, that's against the law. I just leave my cash on the table and take what I want.
I'm going to repeat that so that you can hear it and so that it gets on the recording, because that was very important. It's a fundamental principle in law, is if you tender payment that was agreed on and then it is refused, you cannot be sued for breach of contract, and you can exercise your end of the contract, which is to take the item that you agreed to bargain for. And that's a fundamental principle. But again, we are not living in a government of laws, and progressively, arithmetically, that is more so the case every year. If you haven't figured out where the evil people are going, then you have been sleepwalking for our lifetime, for your lifetime, okay? And so this deserves to be an entire presentation. It's not, but I just want to set some things in your mind to get you working, okay? Ever since 1970s, and gallopingly more so every year, okay, the general government and the state governments, with the collusion of the tech giants, are violating the Fourth Amendment to come to know and track everything you do. For instance, if you haven't figured out, this presentation is being recorded and stored south of Salt Lake City as we speak, then you haven't been paying attention to the congressional record either, okay? But at a certain point, you have to live with that, okay? We are, despite this, right now with Federal Reserve notes, free to retain them in our pockets, in our homes, and withdraw from the banking. But where the Federal Reserve System is going is to make that no longer possible, okay? You'll have digital Federal Reserve notes only, and no paper. But this is important. When we think about the original constitutional dollar, you always have that retention in your own pocket, and the circulation in everybody's pocket is the one thing that would have prevented FDR and the diktats of the 1930s. In the 1930s, had every American used to a significant extent in all his transactions the real dollar, one, he would not have fallen already then into the misapprehension that this note promising one was the real deal. Two, FDR's diktat would have been useless and nobody would have complied with it, okay? And Congress wouldn't have followed up with a statutory backup of that diktat. But because we've allowed ourselves to get in the habit of no longer circulating the real item, and that has in turn led to our confusing ourselves about the use of terms and actually coming to believe that those notes are the real thing, that leaves us so vulnerable. Now, with all those cryptocurrencies, do you have that ability to retain? Well, no, you don't. If there's a thermonuclear blast, you have lost all your holdings. And again, where the government of almost all countries of the world is going is finding ways to invade what privacy there is, to invade it, and then to supplant it with central bank digital currencies, which will not only make that privacy impossible, but will enable them to turn you on and off at will, as they did in Canada. Yes, sir.
If in the 1930s, when they had the lawsuit about Franklin Roosevelt seizing of the gold, the circulating gold, that went to the U.S. Supreme Court, if the court case had been in reverse, how would that have affected what happened in the 1930s?
Tremendous. I'm going to restate the question. I'm not going to have time to go into it, but he asks, in the 1930s, when people sued over FDR's seizure of people's gold and silver and the statute that followed that up, had the Supreme Court actually read the law and come down properly, how would that have affected all history? That's such a huge thing that I really can't with the time, but that is a very important question. But my point that I was making before is, had we all been circulating and using every day the real item, both gold eagles and US dollars in our pockets, it would have been effectually nullified, because there are only two securities in a republic of laws for that republic of laws. And one is in ours, Article 1, Section 6, Article 6 of the Constitution, which requires every officer to hold his or her office on condition of an oath to support the Constitution of the United States. That's one, okay? And as the integrity of public servants disintegrates, the usefulness of that one disintegrates. And the other is the general popular awareness and insistence on making our servants obey the law. That has also disintegrated. But we can resurrect that by putting actual dollars in everybody's pocket, persuading our fellow Americans to use the actual dollar and have it in our pockets. And if all of us stood to lose the next time they do that, it would be ineffectual, because they would know that we would throw them out. Yes, sir.
A while back, were a bunch of people who didn't get their direct deposit from pay.
Right.
I think that was kind of a beta test for manufactured financial crisis to lead to widespread adoption of like a central bank digital currency or something like that.
So let me repeat that part and then. So the comment or the observation was a while back, there were a bunch of people all around the country who failed to receive their direct deposit. And his assumption was, and I think it's a correct assumption, was that was a beta test on what we were talking about, what's happened in Canada and other places. The whole point is digitally, just, you don't exist, okay? That's why FDR and Mariner Eccles in 1937 created the Social Security Act. Its ultimate purpose is to fulfill John's revelation. That portion of it is the ability to turn off your existence at will. Okay, it's still just as unlawful, but you needed that practical capability, and they're beta testing it as we go on and on. I can turn you off; you no longer exist. It's like you read Logan's Run or something. You know, it's these. Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to tell us about how we can institute this in a
Yes. Yes, we're going to go, and that's where this is going. Is how the question is, how are we going to get to where we can implement legislation in state and county? Yes, we are. Okay, but I cut you off. You had a follow-up question. Okay, what would I recommend to combat that? I recommend that we all persuade each other to use real constitutional silver dollars, and that we ensconce bulwarks of safety around that with state and county power, with state and county legislation. That's where this is all going. Again, that is the solution. It's hopeless to try to persuade our public servants to obey the law, okay? They're not going to. You will have noticed by now, and we talked about that, if it is honest, if it is seaworthy, and if it offers some degree of privacy, for those virtues alone, DOJ, Department of Treasury, and the Federal Reserve will attack it with everything they have, and they have much more than you ever will have, okay? Their very virtue is what makes them a threat to the fraud. If you don't understand that, you'll never get this. What is needed is layers, concentric circles of impregnability. That's what Mr. Brown was telling us yesterday. Under our constitutional order alone, under our federalist structure, we are a national republic for some purposes, and we are a union of 50 separate republics for other purposes. That doesn't exist anywhere in the world, hasn't existed in written history. This federalist structure is the genius. So Bernard von Nothausen and any others, you and I are helpless against the infinite resources and infinite violence of the criminals who are our public servants. But the point is, it requires the force of a government, a state government or a county government, and standing on the explicit constitutional structure of federalism to have force against force. And Mr. Brown, I think that made that very clear. And that's a fundamental principle that I propose we use. take advantage of to get our state legislatures and our county councils to erect statutory barriers of safety, okay? Utilizing the fact, one, that the 10th Amendment, we have expressly reserved to all the state governments any power that we have not forbidden to the states, okay? Second, in Article 1, Section 10, we have expressly reserved the specific power of the states to make legal tender acts. Specifically, it can't be more black and white than that. And thirdly, in doing so, we have forbidden the state governments to exercise that power with respect to anything but gold and silver coin. That's an impregnable position inside an impregnable position inside an impregnable position, okay? And then the force of violent force, official government force standing behind it, okay? No private individual should or can attempt that. There we go. I went, whoop. Okay. Now, the impregnability of the status, constitutionally and statutorily, of the actual dollar of the United States. It is, by Constitution and statute, the monetary unit of the United States. Its weight and fineness are known since 1792 by scientific weight and chemical analysis. For all time, its definition is fixed. Its subsequent history is that Congress has always minted it to that standard and mints it to that standard today. There was a hiatus after 64. Congress stopped minting it, but has been minting it again recently. I think I showed you a picture of a 2023 United States constitutional silver dollar. Okay, it's still minting it, not in sufficient quantities. Yes, sir.
Okay, you use silver here, but what about gold?
The gold deal, that's fine.
Same thing?
I'm focusing, no, it's not, but it borrows the strength of the silver dollar, because under our Constitution, Congress can. Oh, the question was, I've talked about silver, and I haven't talked about gold. That's because the silver is the standard of the entire legitimate constitutional monetary order. But that constitutional monetary order has from the start included gold coins, the gold eagle, and Congress, in minting them, commands that their exchange rate with dollars be regulated at such and such a rate, okay? So those legitimate gold eagles that are minted today are legal tender and are just as good, but they're good dependently, not independently. They're good because they are linked to the dollar of the United States and regulated according to its value, okay?
So what's the difference between a silver eagle and the United States?
The question was, what is the difference of a silver eagle? If you have a silver eagle, that's a beautiful coin. It's been minted since 1985. She asked, what is the difference between that and the constitutional silver dollar of the United States? The difference is this. It is mislabeled a dollar, and it is 30% overweight for a dollar. It has an ounce of silver, whereas a real dollar has something like 0.77 ounces. Okay, so it's overweight for a dollar. And Gresham's law will tell how those will circulate against each other, okay? Same thing with the gold eagle today says $50 on it. It didn't used to, it just said gold eagle. But because this is too far to go into the weeds, but in time, people popularly called them $50 because they were regulated against $50. So, but Congress never pretended until later years to accidentally call it a dollar. Okay, it's not a dollar. But anyway, they're legal tender coins, but the foundation is the constitutional silver dollar. That will always be the dollar of the Constitution that the Constitution talks about in two places. You can't go to a time machine and change it to something else, okay? Good, move on. Again, these aspects of the dollar status make it a rebuke to any attempt of courts and presidents and other miscreants to do their tyranny with regard to it. Don't complain to us, as you did falsely, hypocritically in Bernard von Nothhaus's cases. Oh, we were just stepping in to protect the dollar because he was counterfeiting the dollar. You can't get away with that fraud. That was so palpably ludicrous. But, the judges wanted to cooperate to see that happen. But you can't do that. We're talking about this is the original item, okay? This is the original unit of account of the United States by Constitution and statutes. And constitutionally, Congress has power to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting what? Federal Reserve notes? No. Any other country's coin? Only when they have been domesticated by Congress regulating their value against the dollar, which Congress used to do, but has ceased to do for a long time. And the securities, okay? So if you counterfeit a government bond, Congress has power to make that imprisonable. Okay, so these are the legislative frontiers that we need to map and claim. And I'm just going to give you the rudimentary principles of how to map this territory and then occupy it in your state and in your county. First, your legislation must formally recognize. You begin with, legislative acts often begin with findings. Let's orient ourselves where we are in legal and constitutional history so we remind ourselves the world of definitions that we're talking about, okay? First, state formally recognized, and Utah did that in 2011, and then 2012, it refined the act. That's the Utah Legal Tender Act, which had the whole world, as far away as China visiting Utah to say, wow, what are you doing here? And it was the most timid first step in this direction, merely recognizing, hey, the Constitution of the United States and the statutes of the United States make these gold and silver coins legal tender. We, the state of Utah, recognize that. 2011, and then it was refined in 2012. At this time, I was involved in a small way, with a superior bill in Montana. And Edwin Vieira went out there to testify and advise them. And it was a superior bill. And we almost got it through the lower house. Almost, but not quite. Utah, on the other hand, got through both houses and across the governor's desk, an inferior bill, but a good bill. So I found myself eating crow, because for years I had recognized that Utahns have this congenital hostility to constitutional government. I found myself eating crow and bringing some Montana legislators to the Utah State House to meet with and learn from some Utah legislators. That was very difficult for my pride, my animus, that I went to college in Utah, and before my Navy career had experienced that, and Utahns here can tell you that I'm telling the truth. Utahns have a very ironic, visceral, unconscious hostility to constitutional government. And so it was very humbling for me and these Montana legislators to come and learn from, but we did. And other states around the union have been following Utah's example. Even though it was it was a step in the right direction. They began by saying, this is legal tender, and they went and say, because it is legal tender, not simply a commodity to be bought and sold, if you buy and sell in it, and we have a tax that we can levy on you, we will tax that in that coin. So if you're a merchant and you sell these many goods in Federal Reserve notes, what's the Utah state tax rate for merchants? Do you know? Whatever it is, say it's 5%. You will remit to the Treasury in Salt Lake 5% of those Federal Reserve notes. But however much of your merchandise you sold in actual silver dollars or in gold eagles, you will remit 5%. So you may send us 3 revenue streams, gold eagles, maybe 4, because you might sell stuff in silver eagles, okay? But those are legal tender. You send us 4 different revenue streams because we recognize in the statute this is legal tender. It's not merely a commodity. Yes, sir.
What is the real dollar then? You said that the silver eagle,
Yes.
starting in
Yes.
1986, was more than the real dollar. What is it, a bar? Silver bar?
No. The question is, what is the silver eagle? It is a.
No. What is this real silver dollar?
This is a real silver dollar, right here.
Oh, you're talking about a Morgan dollar?
Yes. It doesn't have to be Morgan. It could be a peace dollar. Yeah, or a previous one. And any dollar that meets the constitutional standard that Congress has deliberately ordered to be minted at any time in our history to that constitutional standard is, by constitutional and statutory definition, still today the dollar of the United States.
Does it include the 2023 that they
Yes. I showed you a picture of the 2023. That is made to, the question was the 2023 dollar that Congress minted starting in 2023. Yes, that meets the constitutional definition, the statutory definition of the dollar, still does, and they got around to minting it to the correct weight and fineness. They started in 1985 issuing these silver eagles, and it's 86. I'm sorry, they started in 1985 to create gold eagles again, but to imbecilically call them $50, okay, because they're way overweight for the gold coin that would be worth silver dollars. And they started making the beautiful Walking Liberty or silver eagle, beautiful coin, but way overweight. But all of those are still legal tender because they fit within what's required of Congress in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. They are just not the dollar of the Constitution, but they're permissible by the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution permits us to use every other country's currency too by domesticating it, by regulating it officially against our dollar, saying that this many marks are equal this many dollars. And when we've done that truthfully, that becomes the current coin of the United States and it's domesticated, okay? Becomes part of our circulation. Yes?
What's the weight? You keep saying if it is the weight.
Okay, 371 and a quarter grains of fine silver. That's the official statutory definition. Yeah, if you want it in ounces, it's about 0.77. Can somebody help me with a bit more? About 0.77, okay. But the official definition by the Mint Act of 1792, again, which did not create, that's important to understand. The Mint Act of 1792 did not create the dollar. The Constitution already recognized it, and previous statutes had recognized it as the coin that we are using. 1792 merely said, let's define it, because we recognize some are more worn than others. What is, by fact of circulation, okay, the dollar that we're using right now? So they assayed thousands and thousands of them, north, middle, and south, weighed them, did chemical analysis, and came up with a scientific report finding this is what a dollar, by the way, that we've been using, that's been our unit of account for many years now, is by definition of how many grains.
Yeah, but it becomes impossible to use it if they aren't available.
That's where we're going. Our purpose is to circulate them in everybody's pocket, and that requires a pump. I'm a small-time farmer. I have an irrigation system. I have a right to as much water out of that canal as I can use, but without a pump, I can't get it on my land. And without a circulation pump to persuade all of us to put these in our pocket, as Janine rightly says, what good does it do? Hardly anyone even sees one. But when they're in everybody's pocket, and the pump that is required to get them circulating is county and state legislation. That's where we're going next. Okay, remember we said the only reason the Federal Reserve note circulates is that the Treasury Department of the United States accepts taxes in it, and Congress has unlawfully called it an obligation of the United States, and therefore they accept it in taxes. That's a giant pump in Washington, D.C. that makes people, not only in America, but throughout the world, circulate something that they know is worthless. It takes a pump to circulate that. Now what we need are state governments, who are large economic players in their respective states, and county governments, who are lesser but nevertheless significant economic players in their counties, to demand or to use themselves, demand others use the real dollar and to use themselves the real dollar. This is where we're going to go. These are the, if the county status permits it, and you have to read your state constitution. In some states, a county is somewhat an independent unit of government. In other constitutions, the county is absolutely an extension of and a creation of the state legislature. So it depends on your constitution. Okay, you got to read your constitutions. But if the county has this freedom under law to do, then I meant to do state before county, did I? Yeah. First is what you do. You make the real dollar formally. Okay, Utah did that several years ago. Then the next step is you must collect one or more taxes expressly in real dollars. Maybe it's your tobacco tax. Maybe it's your gasoline tax. Maybe it's another tax. You make the law say, for this tax, we recognize that we've been accepting these pretend fraudulent Federal Reserve notes in lieu of dollars, But from now on, we're insisting on real dollars. Remember we talked about Andrew Jackson and the Treasury Circular? Congress passed an act saying, when you buy land from the general government, you have to pay in actual silver, US silver dollars or US gold eagles. Okay, but people looked the other way for a while until Jackson said, no, damn it, we're not accepting notes, we're accepting the real thing. Your state statute has to do that for one or more taxes, saying from here on out, we're going to drastically lower our gasoline tax or our tobacco tax or whatever it is, but we're going to insist you give us real dollars. Okay, now you've just created a pump that it makes a requirement, a necessity in the pocket of the gas dealer or the tobacco dealer. He must have some of these. Make court judgments. Court judgments in our country are always in dollars, but there's no little clause saying, and these must be real dollars, damn it. They can't be notes for dollars. That's very easily done in your judiciary acts, okay? But I would advise in those kinds of situations, you always reserve to the prevailing party in a suit the option that if he would rather have Federal Reserve notes or something else, he may. But you make the presumption in law that every judgment in law is delivered in what it says, dollars. You just make it say real dollars, damn it, not pretend promises. Yes, ma'am.
So then everybody has to show up in person to pay this.
The objection is then everybody has to show up in person to pay this. And my answer is yes and no. Yes, and that's a good thing. We're trying to create a pump that puts these in everybody's pocket and everybody's mind. That's tremendously important. But digital electronics and all the other things of the last several hundred years are still there available with private institutions issuing private notes for the real thing. Okay, that's still just as possible as it always was. I mentioned that I used to be on the board of directors of UPMA, the only organization in the world. It was a non-bank. We do what people think their banks do. We open accounts. We do not steal any of our members' property, and they retain absolute title to it. And we created means by which on a phone, I could transfer title to you. You could transfer title to me, to my gold eagles, my silver eagles, and my silver dollars with digital ease. So that's all there. But it's important that that physical foundation be encouraged. When every American has in his or her pocket and uses all the time real dollars, we will finally defeat the misconception of 100 years that people have, and they will realize, yeah, I may digitally transfer title of it to you, but the coin is the coin. Yes, sir. Did that make sense? Yes, sir.
When I buy a silver coin, it costs me $50. Okay, so if I had a bunch of those in my pocket, do I get $50 worth of goods?
The question is, and tell me if I didn't get it right. I've got a dollar in my pocket. When I buy something with it, do I get $50? And what he means is Federal Reserve notes worth of goods. You will get roughly that. You'll get something better. You will get $1 worth of goods. And again, the genius of Utah's Legal Tender Act, it explicitly made clear, because we recognize the silver eagle, the gold eagle, and the silver dollar, and anything that is legal tender gold and silver coin as legal tender, if you buy or if you sell in one of these, you will pay separate streams of taxes accordingly, the exact same percentage of each. And that begins to create a pump that makes people use them. Next thing is, no, not $50, $1. 50 Federal Reserve notes worth of goods, but $1 worth of goods.
So I give $1 that costs me $50 for a
No.
can of soda, so I get a can of soda for my $1.
No. Merchants in Utah who avail themselves of this act have separate price schedules for all their goods. If you buy in real dollars, it costs 10 cents. If you buy in Federal Reserve notes, it costs $5. If you buy in gold eagles, it costs that. You have parallel. This is what the Austrians have trying to think for years, trying to figure out ways to have parallel currencies. Well, we already have it in our Constitution. The Utah Legal Tender Act simply takes the first step in availing ourselves of that reality. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I have a dollar, but I'm only buying a fraction of what I want. That means I get 40 reserve dollars back.
Okay, Frank asked the question, I have a dollar and I buy something that costs only 5 cents. I'm going to get my change in Federal Reserve notes. Well, no, you're not necessarily. And again, that's why I pointed out that the digital technology has gone so far. And when I was on the board of UPMA, this is exactly what we did. We made fractional, we transferred fractions of dollars and cents electronically from me to you, just like that. And to do that at a cash register is nothing, is very easy. So that problem of making change, by the way, that's a problem that's thousands of years old. Gold intrinsically carries more value in a smaller weight and space in your pocket than silver. And so for large transactions throughout history, people have preferred gold. But the reason we in our country, well, one of the reasons, determined to make the silver our preference was, one, as I mentioned yesterday, we had been using the silver dollar that came from Spanish mints already for over 100 years, and so it already was de facto. But the other reason, and this was discussed in our legislation and even in the Constitution and by Jefferson and Hamilton and Gouverneur Morris in their thoughtful papers about what we should do, silver is intrinsically a smaller, and for most practical purposes of the common man who earns enough every day to survive, that's the money of preference. So that's part of the reason why we preferred that constitutionally, only part, okay? But you see that. But with digital technology today, you can transfer any fraction of any of those title to it to another person yes, sir. Okay, dang, these are really good, but I really need to get to the meat of of how we tell our legislators to make legislation because we're running out of time. Again, I told you yesterday, this is a 6-hour presentation that, like Dolly Parton, I'm trying to cram into a 5-pound sack. Okay. This is the next step. You amend your militia statutes, okay, from the beginning of this country and long before we had a country, when we had colonies that were part of the British Empire, all of our militias in our 13 colonies and later our 13 states were, and by today constitutionally still are, self-financing. In other words, you don't send taxes to the state house and it sends back tax. No, you run your own militia in your county by company by the fines that you exact for people who don't do their duty. And those have always been exactable in pounds and then later dollars. And in our country, only dollars after we made the dollar the exclusive. Okay, just do that in your militia statute in your state. While you're in the act of repenting from neglecting your militia duty, you say all fines are collectible in real dollars, real constitutional silver dollars. Okay, that's another pump. So these are all ways to create government pumps to circulate, as Janine says, to get them in our pockets. Because right now they're not in our pockets. They're not even in our mind. Most people don't even know they exist. Okay, now what can you do at the county level? First, again, if your constitution allows it, make a county ordinance that says, first of all, we talked about property taxes. Somebody talked about property taxes yesterday. Beginning in the 70s, remember Proposition 13 in California? It said something like they passed a voter initiative proposition that said property taxes can't rise more than whatever, I can't remember, but I was a teenager then, more than this % per year, right? Remember that, Proposition 13? Okay, see that, so it's tied to, you can't raise your property taxes more than this. And not more than 2% per year. So you can see that principle, but this is a superior principle. The superior principle to saying how much they can raise each year is saying, no, we're giving the property owner an option. He can insist that his house be assessed in real dollars, and if so, his taxes on that house will be assessed in real dollars. And if somebody wants to continue to have his house assessed in Federal Reserve notes so that he can puff himself up and say, wow, my house has appreciated 3 times in the last 20 years. Yeah, I bought a tiny farm and house in Utah 5 years ago, and immediately within 3 years, its going price on Zillow was 3 times. Boy, that made me feel good. Was my house changed in any respect? No. It was, the Federal Reserve note was printing the Federal Reserve System was printing more. So give the property owner the option. No, I'd rather my house be assessed every year in real dollars. Guess what? Your assessment's going to stay the same. And if the percentage applied is the same, your taxes are going to be the same through your grandchildren. That's a superior solution to Proposition 13 and all the follow-ons in recent decades, okay? I think we did all the county things. Now, we don't have time for this one, but this is an entire presentation. If you watch what happened to Great Britain, the United Kingdom, versus what happened to the rest of the Europe over the past 30 years, they were all subsumed into a central, absolutely undemocratic, absolute police state called the European Union. A few years ago, the United Kingdom, with great effort, convinced itself to tear away from that. I would submit the only reason the UK succeeded where some of the others did not succeed was UK never gave up its pound. Okay? We think the Federal Reserve System is evil and bad and terrible. It is all of those things. But the supranational world version of it that they intend for us, you will have no recourse. Right now, the Federal Reserve System is a creature of your Congress that your Constitution doesn't allow your Congress to create. Once you give up the dollar, you've given up all claim to having a constitutional monetary system under your control with your national currency. That deserves to be a whole presentation. But that in national independence, the dollar is patriotic because it is our last hold on the independent existence of the United States. Okay, legislative frontiers, we talked about, okay, we did that, right? Yeah, the county can do the same thing. Oh, am I going up? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm pushing the wrong button. The purse and sword, okay, are the most important marks of a sovereign people. We've lost largely the sword and we've lost largely the purse. We need to regain both of those under the terms of our Constitution, okay? That's why I was referring to what happened to Europe, okay? Now, this is the principles to help your legislature draft sensible legislation. First, you must study the U.S. jurisprudence on this and your states. You must know where they've gone right and where they've gone wrong. Because with the U.S. courts, your state courts will do everything perfidious to avoid reaching the issues, to hearing the merits of a case. They will deny themselves jurisdiction. They will deny you standing. They will misread the statute itself. They will misread precedents. They will do everything to prevent this coming to judgment on the merits. So you need to go about this understanding that perfidy and going about it prudently, okay? They will also, if they affirm, they will deliberately affirm on grounds that they know will sabotage you to be reversed in the U.S. courts, okay? They will do all that. So you need to draft your statute strategically with all that in mind. Your statutes must begin by expressly standing on the U.S. and your state's constitution. Then expressly claim the reserved legal tender power reserved to your state. Where feasible, some Utah, well, there are different traditions in different houses of legislature in different states. And they say, well, we don't start with the findings. Well, you may be up against that as we are in Utah, but you have to overcome that, okay? Then you have to, if feasibly, expressly call out what you as a state have done wrong. Expressly mea culpa. We've done that in our history from pre-US days and subsequent days. National deliberate repentance, when expressed by a legislature, is more effectual than when it's expressed by a handful of people in their homes. We recognize, like Samuel Chase, I mentioned, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, I admit when I was Secretary of the Treasury, what I encouraged Congress to do was unlawful. And now as Chief Justice, I'm admitting and writing in my opinion that is unlawful. You must have, if you can get that express repentance. What we did was before was wrong. What we're trying to do now is right. Start with findings. Lay a broad foundation. That's why Utah laid a broad foundation in 2011, 2012. And I had to eat crow and say, well, you're taking a timid step, but you're recognizing you need to begin by laying the foundation and claiming the ground, okay? Then you build an edifice by successive steps in successive years.
So how many other states besides
Oh, who can tell me that? The answer might be 8 or 10. What is it?
Between 7 and 11.
Yeah. And they've all followed Utah's lead, even though Utah's was such a pusillanimous, meek, timid. At least they did something, and it got across the governor's desk. Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. He tells me, oh, my time is up. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. This is crucial. You must know the hell what you're talking about. The evil people have invested trillions in 100 years in buying up and raising up authorities to gain authorities. Those are law schools and economists. Okay. They are threefold the child of hell that they were before, as our Savior said. Right? You've traveled the world in search of one proselyte, and that's the purpose of law schools and the purpose of economics faculties around the country. And it's kept to that purpose very assiduously, okay? So if you don't know what the hell you're talking about, you will be run over, and all the press will collude to make you look like a weird, silly, God, I don't know what he's doing. They will do that. So that's why you must know what you're talking about. An inchoate, honest attempt to do something, well, it's something in the right direction, will probably do more harm than good. And we need to understand that. You must invest the time. There is no getting around that. And Cindy brought this up yesterday, and I said, I'm sorry, there's no getting around it. You must invest the time. First, very easy peasy, memorize the monetary clause of the United States, the Constitution of the United States, and then you must master the specific narrow meaning of each of the monetary terms of art in those art clauses. There's about a dozen. It's not hard, but to know for sure you're memorizing them right, unfortunately, the only way you can do that is to take on this big task of mastering pieces of 8. Because if you don't, you're going to have to accept my word for it when I tell you what those terms mean. Well, that may be good here, but as soon as someone else tells you otherwise, you're going to, well, maybe David Gillie didn't know what he was talking about. Until you know and know why you know and how you know, that demands going through every rabbit hole, as Edwin has done, to what is utterly ungainsayable now. That's why I said he's written the standard work for 500 years. There's nothing in it that will ever be gainsayed. Okay, that's why there are 6,500 footnotes. And so you do have to take on that larger task of mastering what the terms mean, and you, among other things, you won't know that until you've mastered pieces of 8. Oh, Edwin has. I will, but Edwin has lectures. You need to find him online. He's been doing it for decades, and he's the flippin' master. I'm only someone who's fairly well mastered after 2 careful readings, only fairly well. I'm always going back, oh yeah, because we have all our lifetime full of misconceptions that we have to undo, okay? Go to Edwin's tons of lectures. Go to constitutionalmilitia.org is his website, and he has all his constitutional works on the militia and our Constitution and monetary. He has lectures he's been given around, testimonies he's given before state legislatures for several decades. Yeah, Edwin Vieira, Victor India Echo India Romeo Alpha. Okay, he's of Portuguese extraction. All 4 of his grandparents came from the Azores and went to Rhode Island. Edwin Vieira, if you go on YouTube, but go on constitutionalmilitia.org. That's the best place to go because that's legit. You get all his stuff that he's been lecturing for decades, and he lectures much more lucidly than I do. I'm a punk, okay? But you got to master it. And master what your state has gotten wrong in its constitutions from the earliest days. Read your state's first constitution because it was likely better than your state's second constitution. The degeneration is always downhill with time, okay, almost no exception. So read what your first state constitution had to say about money. If there is a subsequent one, see how it's changed. Is it improved? More likely it's worsened. But you need to know that chain so that you can craft legislation deliberately with reference to your state, how we did this right before. We repent that we're doing it wrong now. We're going to do it right there. And the U.S. Constitution, okay? You got to do that. Then you got to find one public servant who honestly, and there's one I've identified in our state, and he happens to represent me in the House. And then you need to educate and work patiently with that one public servant who actually means to honor his or her oath. And there won't be many, but there'll be a handful in every state legislature, okay? And then there'll be a handful who are masquerading. We have one in Utah named Ken Ivory. And all the honest ones think they should go to Ken to ask. Well, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So you got to identify that one and then persuade him. And if you can, you must prevail upon Dr. Vieira to testify before your state legislature. That's hard to do. He's testified before lots of state legislatures, including Utah's. But he's getting increasingly impatient, spending all his time. And people say, oh, that's great. And they go and do their own damn thing that is full of hazards because they didn't do their work carefully. And he hates to fly because of the Nazis at our airport. So if you live close to Virginia and get him to drive to PA or West Virginia, you can probably get him to do that. Or if somebody mentioned yesterday, I'll fly him in my personal plane. I called him yesterday to say, what if someone flew you in his personal plane? Would you come and testify? If you can get him to advise and testify to keep you straight, God bless you, because that'll really do you good. Okay, well, we got to go. I was going to tell you some instances of things I've done, but I don't have time. I've gone way over time. Afterwards, we'll do some questions.
All right, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Oh, we didn't judge the, we're going to have, sometime later today, we'll have to have you correct your quizzes so you can collect your prize. I meant to go, if who got the most right, et cetera. I'm sorry.
All right, so we're going to take a break until 10:30. If you still need to check out, now's a good time. We're going to adjust the morning schedule a little bit, and we'll let you know that when we get back. But 10:30, we'll be back here to continue moving.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to do way too much. But we got good questions.
Yes.
That was what made it longer, and they were good
Well,
questions.
There's too much to really.
But and it
explain.
is. Well, this is at least a 6-hour presentation.
Yeah.
I gave it in an hour a few weeks ago in Idaho. You can imagine that, in a half hour of questions, and it's really the Dolly Parton problem, Yeah, they don't make it broad enough, big enough for this. It's many hours, and again, I've spent countless hours reading Pieces of 8, and
Right.
you see my copy. It's heavily annotated. That's how you learn.
Right. Yeah.
That's how you learn.
Over and over, back
You write
and
notes
forth.
to yourself back. Yeah. And I'm almost through the second time through, but I'm by no means a master of it.
Mm-hmm.
Master it more than anyone I know,
Yeah.
but I couldn't begin to even write an adequate review of it.
Yeah.
No, you know what I'm saying?
We'll give you time to come back and go over
Go over the quiz? Okay, we can do that.
finish up, and then 11:45
Okay.
will be lunch. So we'll give you
Okay.
time there.
Okay. Yeah, I really want to give out those prizes. Yes, sir.
In a state like California,
Yes, sir.
where we have the initiative,
Yes, sir. And we have that in Utah too. The people of the state in certain circumstances can actually change the Constitution by referendum or voter initiative and change statutes. So California, we have something similar in Utah.
well, in California, the original Constitution was when California was a republic.
Yeah, that was the Kit Carson Constitution, right?
And then they changed the Constitution
Uh-huh.
in 1879.
My guess is they made it worse. Am I right?
Well, they made a lot
It
of
was
some
better.
changes better, worse. That was
Yeah, some better, some worse.
And in the original, well, anyways, and since then, the Constitution of California has been amended many times. So we are technically under the 1879 Constitution as amended by
Yeah, as
statute.
amended over 100 years,
Over
right?
150 years
150.
almost now.
Yeah.
But we don't have the initiative.
Yeah.
And the trouble is that the voter people is that there's some initiatives